All right. I think we are live, so let me get all set up while we're waiting on some people to join in here. If this is your first time here, I will just give the disclaimer I always give is that this is just kind of an Ask Me Anything session. I don't have any topic planned. I just do my best to answer the chats as they come in, so feel free, go ahead and ask whatever you want to ask, and I will do my best to get those questions answered. So, hey, there we got Cuberus here. It looks like he says, hey, all. We got a couple of people here. Christian Acevedo. Give me a second, guys. Let me get all logged in here so I can see the chat, and we'll get going here. All right. I think we're just about there. I got some weird thing going on with my camera lens. There's kind of a glare across the screen, but you guys don't come in here to see me anyway, do you? So, hello to you. Let's see, Christian Acevedo, Angel, B-Dog, Branscombe Farm, and Boris. Hello to you guys. God's Outdoor Disciples, hello to you. And Shorty Ballin says, can you talk about rabbits? Yeah, we can talk about rabbits. What do you want to talk about? That's primarily what we do here. Talk about rabbits, talk about quail, whatever people ask, whatever we want to talk about. We just... I do my best to answer any of the questions there. You can ask anything you want to ask. I will say keep it family friendly. I will have to kick you out if you don't, because we got people, all kinds of people in here from all over the place, all different ages. So hello to you, William Caruso. Rhonda Snare, hello to you. Backyard Survivalist says, hey, Chris, finally caught an episode in the garden working, but have my earphones on, so I'm listening. Well, thanks for joining us. I appreciate that. I don't know. Well, I guess the sun's still out here too, but we don't have much longer of the sun being out. Eddie Shirez says, oh, I'm sorry, I missed Fred Flintstone. And Shorty says, how to start with rabbits. Okay. Well, that's a big topic, but we can talk about a few things. The first things I would say, if you're going to start with rabbits, depending on what you want to raise them for, if you want to raise them for meat, I'm assuming you do, or you probably wouldn't be here. You'd probably be on a pet channel. First thing to do, get your cages set up. That's always the very first thing to do. Don't go out and buy a bunch of rabbits and then come home and figure out, where am I going to put them? You got to get your cages set up first. Set them up with a good supply of water, whether that be an automatic watering system, water bowls, water bottles, however you want to do that. You know, I would suggest a watering system or water bottles. I think they work better than bowls. Definitely stay cleaner anyway. Get your food and get your feeders in place. Get all that stuff in place first. As far as what feed to feed them, you know, I just suggest going with a commercial rabbit pellet. Look for something a fairly decent amount of protein in it. You know, maybe a 16 to 19%, somewhere right around in there. And that's really all you need to get started, other than the rabbits themselves. You know, if you're looking for good meat rabbits, I always suggest like a New Zealand white, you know, a silver fox. Stay away from the Flemish giants. They don't necessarily make really good meat rabbits, but try to get purebred meat rabbits. It's not important that they're the same breed, just that they're both purebred. I really like a New Zealand white doe and a California buck. And as long as they're purebred, you can crossbreed them. They'll do just great. So that's a couple things. If you have more questions, ask them. We'll get to them as we can. Hopefully that helps you with kind of the get started section of it. All right, Fred Flintstone's here. Hello to you. Eddie says, hey, Chris, when do you go into lockdown? Well, lockdown for quail, I'm assuming you're talking about. Quail usually hatch about day 17, day 18, so I like to go into lockdown on day 15. Counting day 1 is the day you started the incubator. So that's day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so on. So I'm going into lockdown with, I've got about a dozen eggs in the incubator. I'm going into lockdown tomorrow. Tomorrow will be day 15 for me. Depending if your incubator temperature is just a little bit high, they might start hatching a little bit early, so it's best to go in. You know, you could even go into lockdown on day 14. That's fine. No problem whatsoever. But hopefully that kind of answers that. Christian says, hey, Chris, what is the male to female ratio for bob white quail and button quail? Well, I'm not a bob white quail expert or necessarily a bob white quail expert. I'm more of a Coturnix quail expert. But I believe bob whites, oh boy, I'd have to look that up. I wanted to say I believe bob whites mate in pairs. But now that I'm thinking about it, they may not. There may be a little bit of a different ratio. But if they, for some reason, I can't remember. I think button quail, though, you're definitely going to be okay with like 1 to 4 ratio on button quail. But again, I'd have to look those up. I'm not a button quail or a bob white expert. I've never raised either one of those myself. I'm a Coturnix quail raiser. That's what I do. So I'm sorry I can't give you the perfect ratio on that. All right, we'll go on. Hopefully, if somebody in here probably knows the answer to that, and they'll probably answer it for you without me having to look it up. Jose Galarza, I think I got that right, says, my A&M are not laying eggs and are more than 8 weeks old. How much light do you have on them? That's almost always the main issue. They need 14 hours a day of light, and if they're kept outside right now with just natural daylight, it's just starting, depending on where you live, just starting to get to that point of long days. So you may have to add an artificial light, which we have one for sale on my Kickstarter page. You can't get it yet. It'll be in like October or something, but in time for fall if we meet the funding. That's not going so well right now, so it doesn't look like we're going to meet the funding, but you never know. But yeah, that's my biggest suggestion. Add light. That's going to do that. Now, if you've recently moved them around, the stress will keep them from laying eggs. Just give them a couple of weeks. They'll start laying again. No big deal. And that's all you can do in that situation is just wait. But that's usually the biggest case is lack of light. All right. Tony Fryer says, hello again. Are bobwhite quail good for eggs? No, probably not good if you want reliable egg production. I mean, bobwhite will lay eggs, but they're not as reliable. If you want a good egg layer, it's going to be Coturnix. They're the ones, they lay about an egg a day every single day. And bobwhites, they don't lay nearly as regularly as that. So they're probably not your best option for eggs if you want steady supply. And Walt says, still on the bus, home in a few minutes. Well, thanks for joining, Walt. Appreciate you joining, even if you are on the bus. All right, David Butler says, right now I'm building a 7x14 brooder shed. Thanks for the great videos. 7x14 shed. Wow, that's pretty good size. You're going to get a lot of birds in there. I'm kind of jealous. I wish I had a nice brooder shed, but I would just fill it with other crap and it wouldn't be a brooder shed anymore anyway. Lily Joseph says, how often should you feed quail? I pretty much keep their feeder full all the time. If they go without food, it doesn't take very long before they kind of get like panicky, like they're never going to get fed again, and they start picking on each other and turn to cannibalism. So just keep their feeder full all the time. They will not overeat. You don't have to worry about that. If you've seen my no-waste feeders or low-waste feeders anyway, they don't waste very much feed in those. Basically just like a Tupperware style container with a hole cut in the side for them to stick their head in and eat. Don't make the hole too big. You know, you're only looking at like, what's that, about a 1.5 inch hole, something like that. That's about as big as you need. Just enough for them to get their head inside. And, you know, put it up, you know, high enough to where you can put enough feed in the container, but low enough where they can reach down to the bottom. That's really not that complex, but hopefully you kind of figure that out. Keep it full all the time. Just keep, I mean, not full, but keep access to feed all the time, and they'll do great. Penny Budinsky is here and says, hello. Hello to you. Exotic Keeper says, holy cow, I finally catch you live again. Well, thank you so much for joining. All right, Angel B Dog says, sorry I asked this last week, but I could hear your answer because I had to go. But what do you keep the temperature precise in an incubator? Because sometimes my incubator suddenly changed temp. Well, okay, how do you keep the incubator temperature precise? You don't necessarily. It is going to fluctuate a little bit. That's pretty normal. Now, depending on how much you're talking about fluctuating, you know, I set mine at 99.5 degrees, and it, you know, sometimes I look at it, it's at 95.6, 95.8. Then it'll drop back down, 95.2, 95.1, somewhere right around in there. As long as it kind of levels out somewhere around 95 and it's, you know, 99.5, there we go. Most of the time, you don't have to worry about it too much. Biggest suggestion I can do is, or I can make, is put it in a room that is temperature controlled and stays fairly constant. If you're putting it in an area where there's lots of drafts, then yeah, naturally the incubator is going to struggle to keep a consistent temperature. Also, if you keep it in front of like a sunny window, when the sun beats in during the day, that's going to heat the incubator up and make it struggle. You want to keep it in an area that's fairly constant with the temperature, and that will help out a lot with that. Hopefully that helps. All right, hello to you, Cindy Skillman. All right, Lily Joseph says, how often do you feed your quail? Well, I think we answered that one. Hopefully we got that answered. Sharon Pace says, hi, Chris, got 2 blue New Zealands. Very nice. Congratulations on your new rabbits. Rhonda Snare says, I'm thinking I need to drive my doe around the block. LOL, 4 days now, no lift. Well, you may have to resort to that. Let us know how it goes. I've never had to resort to that, but I hear great results from people saying that works. If you have a doe that just doesn't want to breed, drive her, put her in a pet carrier, drive her around the block a couple of times, and then put her in with the buck. For some reason, it works. All right, Sieben, hopefully I got that right, says, greetings from New Zealand. Love your work, Chris. I have a New Zealand white. Well, thank you for joining all the way from New Zealand. It's got to be like, what, 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that there? Goodness. And, yeah, New Zealand whites make great meat rabbits. They're one of my favorites. Boris says, look like bright light in the background, making glaring in the camera. Yeah, it probably is the grow lights back there doing that. I don't know if that, does that change it? I don't know. We'll see. Here, why don't I just turn them off? Give me a second. All right, we'll see if that makes it better. Is that better? Hopefully that's better. Thank you for the suggestion there. My wife's got some flowers up there under the grow lights. All right, Christopher Stone says, I have 27 grow outs, 7 weeks old. I have a coop, 24 square feet, and I currently have 2 males and 6 females, 1 year old. I want to add 8 more females and 1 male to the coop. Is that okay, or will they fight? Yeah, they'll probably fight, but they'll probably work it out. Let's see, you have 27 grow outs, 7 weeks old. You have a plenty big enough coop. You have 2 males and 6 females, and you want to add 8 more females and 1 male. Yeah, I mean, then you've got a pretty equal number there. You're wanting to kind of mix together, I think, if I'm reading the question. I mean, that's a lot of numbers. I'm trying to keep it straight. So, yeah, they'll probably work it out pretty quick, but there's probably going to be some fighting. Anytime you mix groups of quail together, if they're at least 8 weeks old or older and they're in the breeding cycle especially, they're going to fight some. But they'll usually work that out pretty quick, and they'll be okay in the end. So hopefully, I mean, that's all you can do, really. Now, I've had really good luck mixing in younger birds. So if they're only like 5 weeks old, they're big enough not to get just trampled on when birds are moving around, but they are not, they're not sexually active at that point. So they don't seem to be seen as a threat, and the other birds don't seem to pick on them nearly as much, or at all, really. That's worked out really well for me. All right. Oh, and somebody else made a recommendation. They saw it on, I think it was Aloha Quail's channel, that spraying it down with a vinegar water solution, I believe they said, spray the whole hutch down, the birds, everything, when you mix in new birds, and it kept them from fighting. I don't know why that would work, but apparently it did. All right, where are we at here? James Caswell says hello to everyone. Says hello, Chris and everyone. Hello to you. Sieben says, wondering if I can mix with a Flemish Giant for meat. You definitely can mix a New Zealand white with a Flemish Giant. They don't make the best meat rabbits. I've tried that before, and usually what I find is they grow out incredibly slow. The Flemish Giants, although they're a great big rabbit, their meat to bone ratio is not that good. So even though you get a bigger rabbit, you don't really get any more meat out of them, and they grow out incredibly slow. So if you're just breeding, you do it. There's no reason you shouldn't do it. If you want to, and that's what you have available, go for it. But if you're like looking to really cut your cost, there's going to be a lot more feed involved in getting the Flemish Giant crosses up to weight than there is in getting a New Zealand white up to weight, if that makes sense. So not really the best combination, but yeah, you can do it. No reason you can't. All right. William Caruso says, my Jumbo Browns are about 9 weeks old and not laying. Any ideas? They get 12 to 13 hours a day of light. I feed them a layer feed, and the males are calling. Okay, probably 2 things there I would say, William. One is 12 to 13 hours is just barely enough to get them to start laying. 14 hours is really what they need. So if you can add a light for another couple of hours a day, that will help. Also, I would change the feed out. Layer feed is usually a pretty low protein. So I would bump the protein up. Look for a game bird starter or a turkey starter with somewhere around 25% or higher protein. Most layer feeds only like 19 to 20%. So I would go with a higher protein layer feed, and that might help as well. All right, Eddie says, he's answering Jose Galarza. There we go. I have such a hard time with names sometimes. Sorry. Says, my A&M started laying at 12 weeks. Yeah, that's not uncommon, especially, like I said, this time of year, because the daylight, I mean, it's just now starting to get to 12, 13 hours a day of light. They really need 14 hours to lay pretty consistently. All right. Lily Joseph, again, says, how often should you feed quail? Sorry, I already got that answered for you. I know there's a little bit of a lag from the time I say something to the time it actually displays on the screen, and I'm a little slow. I mean, I'm a little behind in the comments, so you can kind of look at the comments after yours, and if I've answered that one but didn't answer yours, ask again for sure. And it's okay. Keep asking if you want to. not going to bother me if I see the same question or asked over and over again. If you feel like I didn't give you a good answer, ask something else so I'll know it's a different question or you're asking for more information on it. All right, Floyd Flintstone says, is reverse osmosis water okay for quail? Yeah, sure, it's fine. I don't see any reason to do that, but yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. You can give it to your quail. All right, Cuberus says, wife health update, please. Well, thank you so much for showing your concern there. I do have some information about my wife. A few more prayers for her. She is, for the most part, she's doing pretty well. But she is having some problems with the hormone blockers. And let's see, how can I explain this? Well, I guess I can just tell you the deal. If you guys don't know the story, my wife's been through a lot of health issues the last year and a half. She started off with, finding precancerous cells, resulting in her having to have a hysterectomy. They did not take her ovaries out at that time because they didn't want to necessarily send her into menopause. She's only 40 years old. She was only 39 at the time. And then later that year, they found out she has breast cancer. So she ended up having a double mastectomy. They caught it very, very early, so prognosis very, very good. She had a double mastectomy. She had some radiation treatment. That's all done, and she's on a hormone blocker now. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, that's causing some problems, and she's having, some problems that she shouldn't be having after having a hysterectomy. Let's put it that way. So went into the doctor, and the doctor's now suggesting that she has another surgery to go ahead and remove her ovaries because that's what, it looks like the hormone blocker is what's causing that. If they remove her ovaries, she won't have to take the hormone blocker anymore. So I think for the most part, she's looking forward to that because she really doesn't like the way this hormone blocker is affecting her. But it does mean another surgery. It's a fairly minor surgery. It sounds like a big deal, but it's a fairly minor surgery, pretty quick turnaround on that. But just pray for her in the sense that, this has been a lot. She's 4 surgeries, if you can include the lumpectomy to find out about the breast cancer, 4 surgeries in a year and a half. And, pretty major changes to her body. And, I think it probably does wear on her a little bit at times. She doesn't necessarily show that. Her spirits have been good, but just pray for her patience, pray for her healing, and more than anything, just mentally and emotionally, I think that's where she's going to need the most help. So, again, thank you for all your concern. Appreciate that. But, again, nothing life-threatening or anything. She's doing pretty good overall. All right, and we just found that out yesterday, so it's not like I'm hiding stuff from you guys. But all right, God's Outdoor Disciple says, just recently put a light in my Quail shed to try to promote egg laying. My birds are about 4 to 5 months old, and I just put the light in there last Saturday and got some white foam. That looks like they're, okay, so it goes on. I guess my question is, since I have light and have noticed white foam, will I get closer to eggs? Yeah, you probably will. Give them about a week or 2 after you put light in there, and you should start hearing them crowing. You should start seeing eggs coming in pretty quick. All right, so come see Ben. I bet that's what it is. I've been pronouncing it all funny. Come see Ben. I bet that's what your name says, isn't it? Anyway, says, can I mix a New Zealand white buck with a Flemish giant doe? I think we already answered that question. If not, let me know below. I'll expand on it if I need to. All right, Camo Hunter 011 says, this is my first time hatching quail, and I was wondering if you had any tips for raising them because they should be hatching around this weekend. Today is day 16. Well, they should start hatching probably tomorrow. I would be surprised if you didn't. Well, first of all, get your brooder set up, and that can be anything. I use a big, clear, like Rubbermaid container, a big one, a 13-gallon or bigger. I don't know. It's probably bigger than that, actually. And, put screen on one side of the lid. You could leave the lid completely off if you want to, but it won't be very long before they'll be big enough they'll jump out. So it's best to put a lid on there. I just cut a half of the lid out, left the kind of the frame, and screened it in with some hardware cloths. So you have ventilation, but they can keep in there. Put a heat lamp over it, get it to about 100 degrees in there. Just put the heat lamp on one side so they have a gradient. They can get, if it's too hot over here, they can move over to the other side of the brooder box. It makes sense, hopefully. That's my biggest suggestion on that. Other than that, I got a ton of videos. Go back to my homepage, and there's a whole playlist on Quail quail. You can just scroll through there. Ton of videos on raising quails. So if you have a specific question, feel free to ask it, and I'll do my best to answer that. All right. David Butler says, how do I get to your Kickstarter page? Well, it is, let's see. Let me grab a link real quick, and I'll post it in the comments for you. Let's see, what's the, I think that's it right there. Give me a second. No, that's not. That's in a different language, isn't it? Yeah, that is. I don't know why that's in a different language. I think, no, that's not it either. Let's see if this is it. No, that's like German or something. Don't know why it comes across in German. Kickstarter on project, slightly rednecked automatic coop light. That should have been it. All right, let's see. Where did the chat go? There's the chat. Okay, here. I think that is the right link. Hopefully it's not in German or something, but you can check it out. I just put it into the chat window there. Again, it's not going very well right now. It's pretty slow. I've done some advertising, pushed it out to all the groups I can, just not getting the interest I expected out of it. I thought it was a great idea, but, you know, who knows. All right, so for button quail, it depends on the size of your cage for the male to, the ratio of male to female. Good point there, Rhonda. All right. Christian says, Chris, oh boy, lost something here. There we go. Chris, can a rabbit live in 30 wide by 18 high by 18 deep? Yes, a rabbit can live in there, but that's a little bit on the small side for especially a doe with her kits. If you're talking full-size meat rabbits. Now, if you're talking the smaller breed pet rabbits and those kinds of things, then that's plenty big enough for them. I would go a little bit bigger than that. I like to go with a 36 by 30 cage for my rabbits. Gives them plenty of room. 18 inches tall is probably tall enough. I would go probably 24 inches if you could. You want them to have enough room to stand up on their hind legs to be able to stand up fully. Hopefully that answers that question. Rhonda says, yeah, bobwhite quail, and I still haven't gotten any eggs. Yet I got Coturnix quails, and I'm on my second batch that should be starting to lay eggs in a week or two. Yep. Yeah, Coturnix are definitely a much better egg layer than bobwhites are. In fact, I think they're probably a better egg layer than any of the other quail out there as far as for domestic purposes. All right, William Caruso says, found a duck egg while fishing and currently have it in the incubator. Anyone know about incubating duck eggs? Well, let's see. Temperature is the same as what you would incubate, you know, any other bird egg at, 99.5 in a forced air incubator. I can't remember what is the, don't quote me on this, you'll have to look it up. I want to say lockdown on duck eggs. I think their hatch time is like 35 days or 32 days. I may be wrong. You're going to have to look that one up. I can't remember exactly. One thing I will caution you about, it's technically, I don't think you're going to get in trouble for it, but it's technically probably illegal to capture that duck egg and incubate it. It's, you know, most of the time it is to bring wildlife in without a permit. But again, I don't think you're going to have any problems with that. I wouldn't worry about it too much. All right. Exotic Keeper says, brooder shed, if you had concrete floors, would you recommend using tarps for droppings like you do for the rabbits? It's probably not a bad idea. Concrete is somewhat porous, and it will soak up like urine and some of those kinds of things. So if you want to keep it, you know, pretty nice, yeah, tarps are probably a good idea to put down. All right, Kurt Stewart says, hello tonight. I just set 48 eggs in the incubator last night. Very nice. Good luck on your hatch. All right, Christian says, Chris, when are you going to move your rabbits to where the quail? Less maintenance. Yeah, I'm thinking about that. I'm considering moving them back there by the quail. I don't know. I'll have to have some help because the rabbit shed is too big for me to move by myself. I can probably get 4 or 5 friends to come over and move it with me. We'll see. I don't know if I'm going to or not. That area back there, I don't want them in full sun, but that area back there has got a lot of little tree cover right there, so it really stays shaded pretty much all the time. So I think it'd be a good place to move them to. And you're right, it would be less maintenance for sure. All right, Tony Fryer says, how much are Coturnix quail? I'm in the UK and can't find any for sale. Tony, I wish I could help you out with like a supplier there or something. I don't know of any suppliers in the UK or anybody that'll ship to the UK. I know that, you know, I always recommend Kansas City Quail Farms for eggs, but I know that I don't believe that they do ship there. Somebody the other day said that My Shire Farm would ship to Hawaii. If they'll ship to Hawaii, they might ship to England as well. I don't know. You can check with them and see. As far as how much they are, it varies a lot. You know, around here, if you're looking for them, like if you can buy them locally, usually looking for about $5 for an adult bird, and anything under, you know, like a week old goes for usually $1, 2 weeks go for about $2, 3 weeks go for about $3, 4 weeks go for about $4, and then anything else is $5 usually. Eggs usually sell for about anywhere from 50 cents to $1 a piece. Actually, that's a little high. I'm sorry. Usually sell from about 25 cents to 50 cents an egg when you buy them there. So I don't know. That's going to be way different in your area, of course. I'm sorry I can't give you a better suggestion. I just don't know for sure any suppliers in that area. All right. Tessa says, I got 14 fertile bobwhite eggs that are on day 15. Well, good luck with your hatch on those. I hope they do well. All right. Chicken Nugget says, hey, Chris, my chicken has been walking like she is drunk. We have some vitamins, and they are working, I think. Yeah, that sounds like, I mean, it could very well be a vitamin deficiency, probably like a vitamin E. That's one of the most common ones. Or maybe even a thiamine deficiency. You know, I'm not a chicken expert at all, but those are pretty common things you see in poultry, and those are pretty common deficiencies that cause that. So I think you're on the right track, giving them some vitamins. You might look at your feed and make sure it's got high enough ratios of those kinds of vitamins. And if not, change feeds to prevent that from happening in the future. All right. Jenny says, what can I use to prevent mites on quails? Well, Jenny, I mean, I don't know. I hear people talk about this. What can I use to prevent mites? I don't think you need to worry about preventing mites unless you have like a huge problem with them in your area or something. I would just treat them if the quail get the mites. What you could use to treat them is things like diatomaceous earth, but honestly, I think that does more harm than good when you're using it to prevent things. Diatomaceous earth can really cause some respiratory issues, some pretty major respiratory issues in birds and in people for that matter. And it's a broad spectrum. It kills everything, and you don't want everything dead anyway. There's good bugs out there. So I would suggest, I mean, you know, you can use some things like lime and those kinds of things, but honestly, in my experience, mites are not a huge problem on quail. And I mean, if you're keeping them on the ground, you're probably going to have a little bit of a higher risk of getting them than if you keep them in a raised hutch, like in a cage or something like that. But even then, I don't know that it's a huge problem. If they get mites, you can treat it. Ivermectin, a couple of those kinds of things are good ways to treat mites. But I wouldn't stress about it. It's not a major concern as far as I know. Or as far as I've never had a problem with it myself. All right, Mary Garrett says, hello. Hello, my dad, Chip, has a question regarding Coturnix quail. 10 weeks old and laying already. How much are they worth to sell? I think we kind of answered that when I was talking about how much do quail go for, but it really kind of depends on the market in your area. What I would suggest is going on like Craigslist or something like that, searching for quail and seeing if other people are selling quail. Especially if you see the same people showing up over and over and over again, that means they're selling their birds, and you know, they'll give you a pretty good idea of what they're selling them for and what the market will actually pay for them. But again, usually around here, adult birds, $5 a piece, and you know, anything less than an adult, usually about $1 for however, you know, for each week that it is old, if that makes sense. All right, Penny says it's probably moldy feed for the chicken who's walking like a drunk. You know, that's a good suggestion, Penny. I didn't mention that, but you're right. That could be. It could be a problem. If you have mold in your feed, that can cause some of those kinds of problems. And it is a good thing to check on. Make sure you keep your feed dry. All right. Let's say Dave here. I'm not going to say your whole name, Dave, but Dave says, Baldy says hi, and I built the small greenhouse today. Soon be time to put the bird outside, but I'll take my time. Nice. Built the small greenhouse and getting ready to put the birds outside. Yeah, I wouldn't rush it. I mean, you know, right here in Missouri, it's in southwest Missouri, it's springtime. But our last frost date's still a little ways away. I mean, it was 80 degrees yesterday. It was like 67 degrees today, but we got a low of 31 tonight. We got a cold front coming through. So, yeah, it may be good to kind of give it a little bit of time, wait. Our last frost date isn't until like the 15th. So Monday's our average last frost date. But that doesn't mean it's the absolute last. I mean, there's still... frost can still come after that. All right. High Prairie Acres says, from Alberta, Canada, do the jumbo Coturnix eggs fit in the little giant regular quail rails? Yeah, I don't have any problems incubating jumbo eggs in my quail rails. Every once in a while, you'll get one that's too big to really fit in there very well, but those are usually double yolk eggs, and you don't really want to incubate those anyway. So, yeah, I don't have any problems with them. All right, Dave says, I've changed my hutch design a few times now. God knows what I'll end up with. Hold hemp seed over 30% protein. Yeah, I usually do that whenever I build something. It changes a couple of times as I'm going through the process. Nothing wrong with that. You're going to end up with something fine, I'm sure. All right, William Safford says, Mary, depends on your location. I see them for $6 frequently here. Yep, in reference to what are the quail worth to sell. Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on your market. It depends on how many people are selling them in your area, what kind of birds you have. If you have, purebred, like meat makers or jumbo pharaohs, they're going to go for more than people selling just standard quail or anything like that. All right. Backyard Project says, praying for her. I'm thinking you're saying praying for my wife. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Chicken Nugget says, well, she is 8 weeks and no moldy food. Well, again, I think you're probably on the right track then with the vitamins on there. Stay on that, and that should help. All right. Camo Hunter says, do you have any tips for taking care of Coturnix quail? I'm hatching 7, and they are on day 16, and it's my first time. I live in Missouri. So, those kinds of questions. No offense. I'm not upset with this or anything, but it's like, do you have any tips for taking care of quail? Good grief, yeah, I have a whole lot of them, but where do I start? It's just such a broad question. So don't feel like I'm picking on you. I'm not. Let's see, you're hatching quail. They're on day 16. It's your first time. I think I already kind of answered that, though. I went through a whole bunch of things. Get your brooder box ready, set up your light, make sure you've got your brooder box warm. I would suggest with the bottom of the brooder box, put some, make sure you put something on the bottom that's easy to clean up. I like paper towels. They work pretty well for me, easy to clean up, and the chicks can get good traction on them. Don't use newspaper. Newspaper's a little bit slick, and you're going to end up with problems with the bird's legs because they can't get traction on the newspaper. Now, you can use something like sand or wood shavings or something like that, but they are, in my opinion, incredibly hard to keep clean. And really a big pain in the butt when you have to clean the brooder out. So that's just the way that's the way I do it. Also, make sure that you don't use just like a bowl for water or something. Put marbles in it or something so the birds can't get in the water itself and can't submerge themselves, can't get more than like their feet in it. You hear about birds drowning, and it's not really that common for them to drown. What really happens is they get in there and they get wet, and then they get chilled. And a wet bird is a cold bird, even under a heat lamp. It's very hard for them to warm up, and they can die from that. So those are my biggest tips on, just to get you started anyway. Again, I'll answer more specific questions if you got some very specific things you want answered. All right. Mark says, I have read a lot, move my mouse so I can see. I've read a lot on the internet that our 10-week-old jumbos should be fed less protein diet and more minerals for best egg laying. Your views? I feed all my birds high-protein game bird starter, and I have great results on it. So that's what I go with. I don't change it when they're older birds over 10 weeks old. I know I've read some studies on that stuff too. If you want to change it, a little bit less protein, more minerals, go ahead. But I'm just telling you, in my experience, high protein game bird starter, all my birds, and it does a great job with the egg production. They lay an egg a day, and it just great. So, all right, Jakir Bahar, I think it is, says, greetings from the UK, Chris. I hope that you're doing well. How do I tame an angry young male quail from pecking at me whenever I put my hand inside his cage? Well, you probably don't. I mean, you might be able to eventually if you put a lot of effort into working with that bird, but chances are he's going to just be that way, especially if he is in the breeding stage, if he's in breeding season, if he's crowing, if he's got, 14 hours a day of light. That just kind of, it brings out the hormones in the bird and it makes him a little bit more aggressive. He's probably going to do that anyway. The good thing is it doesn't really hurt. I mean, they don't peck that hard, so it's not really that big of a deal. The bad thing is that if he's attacking you like that, he's probably going to attack other birds, and he may end up injuring some of your other birds. You may end up having to call him out if you're prepared to do that, or separate him out. Now, you can also put him in a dark area where he has less than like 8 hours a day of light, and that will send him back in out of breeding season, make him a little bit more docile, a little bit easier to handle. All right, Kenneth Meggers says, if raise quail in my house in a cage till they get 4 weeks old and then move them outside in a cage, it is 70 degrees here till they get 10 weeks old. If I let quail, will they find their one food? Okay. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking me, Kenneth. Yeah, raising them in the house till they're 4 weeks and then moving them outside if it's 70 degrees, that's fine. If it's 70 degrees outside, you can probably move them outside a little bit earlier, actually. But yeah, 4 weeks old, perfectly fine. As far as, I'm not saying if you let them go. I mean, I think that's what you're saying. If you let them go, will they find their own food? You know, if you're talking about Coturnix quail, yeah, they'll probably find their own food for the 5 or 6 hours that they live before a neighborhood cat gets them, or, something else. It's probably not a good idea to let your Coturnix quail go. They're not really equipped to survive in the wild, not outside of their native habitat anyway. There's just too many things that can get them here. All right. The Exotic Keeper says, the slightly rednecked automatic coop light via Kickstarter, and posted a link for me. Thank you so much. Penny Budinsky says, I had one stagger around like that, and she survived fine. I don't know what it was either. I thought it was moldy food because in the bottom of the bag I found food clumps together that was moldy. Well, you know what? It can actually be caused by lots of things there. So, Penny, you're probably on the right track. It probably was moldy food, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily moldy food in chicken nuggets situation. It could be something else there too. So, all right, Rhonda says, let me grab a drink here. Boy, times flies, and we're already 35 minutes into the live broadcast tonight. All right, Rhonda says, I'm building a rabbit hutch, and when I'm done, I plan on giving the old rabbit hutch to the quail. I'm going to modify the door, but it's 48 by 12 by 12. Okay for quail. 48 inches by 12. Yeah, it's okay for quail. Don't overload it, of course. 48 inches by 12 inches. That's going to be, what is that, 4 feet by 2 feet? No, 4 feet by 2, well, by 1. So 4 by 1, so you're looking at, and I guess you mean 12 inches high. So you're looking at roughly a 4 square foot cage. You could probably keep 5 or 6 birds in there pretty comfortably. All right, Camo Hunter says, I got to watch some of your videos on Coturnix quail. Have a spectacular day, and thanks for helping me understand what to do more. You're absolutely welcome. Hopefully I did answer your questions. Thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate that. Jakir says, I currently have quails in my shed and leave the light on for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the past 4 weeks. Is there any downside in doing so? They have access to clean water and food all times. I would say, it depends. No, there's not necessarily a bad thing. There's no reason you can't leave them on 24 hours a day. It's my personal belief that they do need a period of dark. I think it's probably a better idea to put those lights on a timer of some kind, to where they gives them about 14 hours, maybe 15 hours a day, and then shut them off. Gives them a chance to, I think it can cause agitation and, maybe make them a little bit irritable, leaving the lights on all the time. But if you're doing that and it's working, then who am I to say, I just know that, with people, it can cause problems. With a lot of animals, it can cause problems. They need that day-night cycle to keep them kind of sane, so to speak. All right, Kenneth Megger says, if I let quail at 8 weeks old, will they find food and water? It's 70 degrees here. I'm not sure what you mean by if you let quail. If you let quail what? If you let them go? Or if you just put them in a cage with food and water in an area? Yeah, they'll find it. I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question, Kenneth. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be a pain and making you ask several times. I don't know what you mean by if I let quail. All right. William McBurney says, here in the UK, Scotland, the 2 main jumbos are Faro and Italians, also called jumbo golds. A&Ms are mostly advertised in the standards. Is this wrong? Are all A&M jumbos? Yeah, A&Ms are not necessarily jumbo size, and there's also a common, a lot of people call a white quail an A&M. A true Texas A&M is not just a white bird. It is slightly different. It is, I believe Texas A&Ms were bred to be jumbo birds. They're not necessarily the biggest of the jumbos, but they are a jumbo bird. But again, not all white quail are jumbo. There's an English white color strain of the Coturnix, And those are a standard sized bird. So that may be what you're seeing, but just people tend to call them A&Ms, if that makes sense. All right, Julian says, I changed my quail feed and they stopped laying. Do you think it's because of the feed? Probably so, but Walt's answering this question too. He says, give it about 2 weeks for them to start laying. Yeah, any kind of major change in your quail, I mean, you drastically change their diet, any of that kind of stuff, they'll usually stop laying, but just give it a week or two. They'll start laying again. It's fine. All right, Raymond says, can you breed A&M to Coturnix? Yeah, A&M are a Coturnix. It's just a different color of Coturnix. You can definitely breed them. They're the same species. They're just different color strains is all. All right, Exotic Keeper says, quail rails. Some of my jumbos constantly lay large, gritty eggs that don't feel like they fit, but they do just fine. Also can leave one chicken rail in just for those big old monsters. Yeah, you could do that. Definitely. Matthew Stevens says, you pickle the eggs? Question mark, it's a question. Any recipe? No, I don't pickle eggs. I tried one time. I did not like them. That was the first time I'd ever had pickled eggs, and I didn't really care for them at all. I may try again at some point because maybe it was just a bad recipe, but I don't have a good recipe to share. I'd have to look one up and experiment with them. But the ones that I actually tried to tried to pickle myself, didn't like. All right, Andy McCorkle says, wear a glove. And I think you're referring to taming up an aggressive bird. Yeah, well, I've never found a Coturnix that can really peck very hard at all. I find it more humorous than I do irritating, or it doesn't hurt, at all. So I mean, that's not a bad suggestion. I just don't find it necessary to do it. Cuberus says, from week 5, I feed my quail chicken laying feed, 17% protein, and they are laying fine, are not skinny or anything. I made the mistake of feeding them spinach by hand every day. Now they demand it. 17% is awful low on the protein, but if it's working for you, no reason to change that. I like a higher protein. But, it's, again, if it's working for you, go for it. All right. William says 17%. Whoa, that's low. Yeah, well, it's low in my opinion too, but, if it's working for you, if you don't have any problems with your birds, the things you would look for there, I mean, they may go ahead and continue to lay eggs, but what you might want to watch for is if they start picking out the feathers of the other birds, trying to get more protein in their diet. That would be a common thing that they would do. Then you might want to up the protein a little bit. But, if it's working, let it go. Gabriel says aquaponics. I'm not sure what that's in reference to, just aquaponics. But if you're asking if I've ever done aquaponics, no, I've thought about the idea, but the thing I don't like about aquaponics is, if I was going to do aquaponics, I mean, it's a great system. I think it works fantastic. But if I was going to do aquaponics, I would want to get a fish yield out of it. And, really, most of the time it's tilapia is what people breed, because they'll breed in captivity. They grow incredibly fast. So you get the fish yield. But I don't like tilapia. I think tilapia is kind of a blob, nasty fish. It's not really good. So, yeah, and, they don't live through the summer or the winters in here. You'd have to keep them warm. So it'd be very short season that I could actually raise them. I could do something else with them, but I haven't gone that way with it yet. All right. Mike says, I let my 16-week-old rooster run free in the backyard last weekend, and he ran free all right. Yeah, I bet he ran off. And he probably didn't make it very long. Vine Hall says, off topic, but just wondering, as I'm getting into racing pigeon keeping, do you or any of the group know any great YouTube or Facebook pages for this? As good quality as slightly redneck. Well, thank you for the kind comment there. I looked into pigeons just a little while. I saw an ad. Somebody was selling them here locally on Craigslist, and I thought, oh, that'd be kind of cool to get in. I'm kind of like that, a little bit ADD in that sense. So I kind of looked into them a little bit. I'm sure there's lots of good YouTube channels on them, but I don't really know which one to recommend you to. I just kind of browsed a couple of videos, and then I finally decided, well, you know what, it's probably not something I need to get into right now. But, Vine, hey, learn what you can. Start your own YouTube channel. Be the one out there that teaches everybody else about them. All right, Cuber says, my quail made it into year 3 now. 17% worked for me. Hey, I'm not judging you. Like I said, for me, personally, I like to use a higher protein. But if it's working for you, who am I to tell you it's not right? But those would be the things I would look for, is just, like I said, feather plucking and stuff. And then Rhonda said, Kenneth ate you. I'm not sure. Oh, then after that, I think that was a typo, because you said, Kenneth, are you, saying that their cage is on the ground. Sorry, phone acted weird for a second. What was Kenneth's question? Where were we at with that? I don't remember what the question was to talk about the cages on the ground. All right, Walt says Texas A&Ms are standard-sized quail with white feathers are considers. Yep. William Safford says, I can live 3 years on McDonald's, doesn't make it good, LOL. You know, I mean, who's to say it's not good for you if you're, I mean, who was the guy that ate a Big Mac every day for like 50 years or something crazy like that and lived, I mean, he's perfectly healthy. You know, me, that probably would not be a good, healthy diet for me. But, you know, again, if his birds are doing fine, they're laying eggs, they made it 3 years now. I mean, who's to say it's wrong? Let them do it. It's no problem. All right, Cuberus says, so how can you be sure your quail are healthier than mine? Well, there's no way to necessarily be sure. I mean, watch your birds. Quail they're pretty hardy birds. They're going to you're going to be able to get away with a whole lot. Doesn't necessarily make them unhealthy, but you will notice if something's wrong with them. If you start having problems, like I said, feather plucking, if they start, just eating tons more than they normally would, if they start gaining weight, if they start losing weight, if they start acting sluggish, if your egg production, really drops more than just a week after you change feed, those kinds of things would be signs that there's a problem. So, all right, Tony Fryer says, just bought 30 Bob White and 40 Caturnix. Congratulations on your new birds. Kenneth says, no, I'm saying if I let them go on their own to find food. Okay, yeah. I mean, you're talking about Caturnix quail, probably. Not a good idea to let them go. They're probably not going to live very long at all. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about, like, let them go in the wild, not keep them in a cage. They would probably find their own food, but again, they're probably not going to live very long. They're probably going to get eaten by a hawk or an owl or a cat or a dog or a snake or I mean, who knows? I mean, everything wants to eat a quail. And they're just not, they've been domesticated for so long that they're not, I mean, there are Caturnix quail in the wild in some habitats, but not usually in like your backyard. That's not the habitat for them. All right, Walt says, consider easier to pluck as a whole chicken and ducks, and the market prefers the yellow skin from the white feather birds over darker skinned birds. Easier to pluck than whole. Oh, I think you're talking about the A&M. Okay, gotcha. Makes sense. All right. Rhonda says, yeah, I agree with Walt. Free-range quail is a snack for something. Yeah, that's what I would say too. I missed that comment from you, Walt, but I agree with you. All right. Jakir says, what are the top 3 biggest jumbo species for eggs and meat in your opinion? I don't know about the top 3. I would say the top 2, jumbo meat makers and jumbo pharaohs. Jumbo pharaohs tend to lay a slightly bigger egg, and jumbo meat makers tend to be a slightly bigger bird, but they're going to be both very, very comparable to each other. You may not be able to tell much of a difference between the two. Those would be the 2 biggest ones, the 2 best ones that I would recommend. All right. Cindy Skillman says, would deep litter be appropriate for quail? It would build deeper cages with a base to hold the deep litter. I don't think there's a problem with using deep litter. I think it would work just fine for your quail. All right, Fred Flintstone says, Mark asked if you should skin or pluck quail. Oh, skin or pluck. I missed that one, Mark. I'm sorry. Don't know where it went. I prefer to skin them just because it's a lot of work to pluck them, and I don't think there's enough. I mean, you're really not getting much more than just the breast and a little bit of the leg off of them. So I don't know that it's worth the effort to pluck them, but I may be wrong. Go ahead and try if you want to. I just find it easier to skin them. All right. Kenneth says, I like to watch quail raise to get bigger than let them go on their own. Well, a couple things you might want to consider is it may actually be illegal to let them go if you're talking about Caturnix quail because they're not native to this area. So that would, you'd have to look into the laws on that. But there's probably no chance of them becoming an invasive species. But at the same time, it's probably technically illegal to let them go, unless you're talking about something like Bob White. Now, Bob Whites are a native species, or California quail if you're in that area, or Gamble's quail if you're in an area. Around my area, it's Bob White. Those are the native wild quail. And if you're talking about those, then yeah, it is definitely an option. Raise them up till they get big enough and then let them go. And you can definitely do that. You'll need a permit from the conservation department to do that. But that's something you might look at doing. But Copernic's probably not a good idea. Matthew Crockett says, hello from Northern Ireland. 1:45 a.m. here. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate that. Ireland's a place I've always wanted to visit. My family is primarily Irish. So there's a little bit of a family tie, I guess, there. I probably still have some relatives in Ireland. Who knows? Maybe someday I'll make it there. Exotic Keeper says aquaponics can be done with bass too. I'm debating on flipping an IBC toad and doing guppies to sell as feeders, as pets, as you can have a lot more per toad. That's a pretty good idea on that, Exotic Keeper. I don't think bass is all that great to eat either, in my opinion. It's a little bit fishy, too fishy for me. If I was going to do it, I'd like crappie or bluegill or rock bass, goggle eye is what we have around here. Those would be pretty nice. But yeah, you could definitely do it. I mean, you could do it with goldfish if you wanted to. Nothing wrong with that. All right, Walt Lars says, aquaponics tilapia requires very warm water here in North America. Bluegill and sunfish are better without extra heat for keeping them alive. Yeah, the problem with bluegill and sunfish is it takes a very long time for them to get up to eating size, and they don't tend to want to breed in captivity very well. But who knows? You could do it. Gator Green says, Chris, what do you think about chickens and quails living in and on the ground pinned together right now? My quails are in a pen, and my chickens are cleaning up after him on the ground. Well, you can try that for sure. There are some concerns where, two concerns I would have if you put the chickens and the quail together. One is that the chickens will eat the quail. Chickens are, they're like little dinosaurs. They eat anything that's smaller than them. And I would be afraid that they would do that with the quail. Secondly, there are some diseases that chickens can be carriers of that quail can be very sensitive to. So, it's not a guarantee that you have those problems, but there's a good chance that you would have them if you do kind of mix the breeds together. So those would be the two things I would be concerned about. Try it and see. Who knows? Maybe it'll work out just fine. All right, Matthew Crockett says, I like to eat my quail eggs on soda bread, avocado, and sweet chili sauce. Interesting. Sounds pretty good. Kira says, I watch my birds and they're friendly towards each other, no plucking or fighting. I will do everything necessary if problems occur. Yeah, I think we're still talking about the lower protein, aren't we? Yeah, again, if it's working for you, keep doing it. No reason to change. All right, Rhonda Sneer says, would it be okay to keep more than 5 quail in the hutch? I talked about 48, 12 by 12. I have 17 in the cage in my house, and they're getting along really well. I don't expect to have all 17 outside. Yeah, it should be okay to keep more than 5, but 48 is 4 feet by 1 foot, so that's only 4 square feet of cage space. Typically, you recommend about a foot per bird, so I wouldn't really go more than about 6, maybe 7 at the most in that cage. All right, Lady Two Chain says, are guineas better than chickens for yard bug problems? I think guineas are probably a little bit better than chickens as long as you don't have any neighbors, because guineas are annoying, incredibly annoying. So, if you have some, neighbors that you want to drive nuts, then guineas are definitely your best option for that. But, like I said, if you don't have any neighbors, guineas are a great solution. But if you have any neighbors or you are easily annoyed by those kinds of things, you might want to stick with chickens. All right. Rhonda Snare says, I'm sure some roosters will go to the freezer camp. Yep, probably so. Walt says, in California, you need a permit to release game birds. I'm sure that you do, probably most places, actually. William Safford says, lady guineas have different issues. They are loud. Watch videos to see if they suit your lifestyle. Yep. They do. They are loud for sure. If you guys remember, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Living Traditions. They did a video that was, I can't remember what it was titled, but it was one of the funniest videos I've seen in a while, where they were talking about, it was like things they would never do again, or things they made a mistake on, or some, things they wish they hadn't done, or something like that. And they were talking about their guineas. That was one of the things, and just going on about how noisy they were, and just, you'd have to watch it to really appreciate it. It was a pretty funny video. All right, William says, I like mine, but mine think they are turkeys. I like mine. What do we think? I like mine. What are we talking about? I'm sorry, William, I lost it. Oh, you like your guineas, but they think they're turkeys. Well, that might be better, actually. Yeah, Walt says the same thing I did. Chicken would probably peck the quail and harm them. Jakir says, what is your take on feeding dried mealworms for quail? Are they prone to diseases? I don't think there's any problem with feeding them dried mealworms. Go ahead and do it. If they'll eat them, feed them to them. No problem. Walt says, quail kept in cages in a chicken coop shed might work. Yeah, that very well might. Magicians for Christ says, do you have any preference between Jumbo Brown and Pharaoh, and why? Well, I like the Jumbo Pharaoh, but oftentimes, I mean, the Jumbo Browns are generally going to be either a Pharaoh or a meat maker. I don't think there's another Jumbo Brown that's not one of those two. I may be wrong on that, but I like the Jumbo Pharaohs. I'm thinking about switching over to Jumbo meat makers though, just because they are a slightly bigger bird. I originally went with the Jumbo Pharaohs because you get a slightly bigger egg, but I don't think the egg difference is that much, and I think I'd rather have just a little bit more meat on the bird than the slightly bigger egg, if that makes sense. So either one of those you can't go wrong with. They're both great birds. Lady Two Chains says, William Stafford can't be any louder than my neighbor's dogs. I need tick eaters, and I have a pond, so birds are preferable over pesticides. Good point. Guineas will do a job on ticks. You may have a hard time keeping them in your yard, but again, they're very noisy, like all the time, very noisy. You might look them up first because they can be pretty darn annoying. All right, Browserd Peter says, just had a hatch of quail that went 21 of 29. That's a pretty good hatch rate. Congratulations. And said a few got stuck in the egg and couldn't make it out. Humidity was 70%. Could that be an issue of not being 75 to 80%? It could be, but more than likely it's a temperature related issue. Your temperature was maybe a little bit low or something like that, and it caused them to just be a little bit weak trying to get out of the eggs. It could be a genetics issue. They could be a little bit weak just genetically. There could be a number of different things. I wouldn't stress about it too much. I mean, you got 21 out of 29 to hatch. That's a pretty good hatch rate. That's not bad at all. So it sounds like you did, for the most part, everything right. All right, Rhonda Snare says, my neighbors drive me crazy, so I'm putting the rabbit hutches where they can't see on my yard no more. Yeah, I put them in a place where they can't be seen. Just don't deal with it. Yep. Walt says, if you raise guinea keats, chicks, with chickens, they act more like chickens than punks. Good suggestion there. Jakir said, would you say the two species you recommend for jumbo quail are bigger than A&M? Yeah, they are. I think jumbo meat makers are among the biggest of the jumbo Coturnix quails. So I think they are bigger than the A&Ms for sure. Rhonda says new hutch for rabbits is 12 feet long, 5 feet wide, 3 feet tall, and I'm dividing it by 4, so each rabbit has 3x5 hutch. Can't wait. Sounds nice. Nathan says, I got 3 guineas at my local farm store. We got them for tick control. Exotic Keeper says, I'm sure Chris won't get to this. You're wrong. I'm getting to it. It says, how are we doing on time? You made me look at the time and make sure we're doing fine. It says, but anyone else notice a lower quality on today's stream? Super pixelated to me. On Note 9 and even a 720p. Yeah, well, you guys, I don't have really sophisticated equipment. I'm streaming off my cell phone. So that's probably a big part of that. And maybe, nope, we're not frozen up yet. For some reason, a lot of times it does come across very pixelated on the feed. I don't know if that's my internet connection, the bandwidth upload, or if it's the, I don't know what causes that. I'm sorry. I wish I could do a better job with that, but I just can't afford to, get the really nice equipment that, live stream like a pro kind of stuff. So we're going to be stuck with this for now. All right, 1 or 2 more questions, and then we got to start wrapping this up. All right, Walt says 12 by 5 by 60. That's a huge pin. Yep, that's a huge pin for sure. Cindy Skillman says, do the meat maker breeds true, or are they hybrids like CX chicks? No, they're a true breed. They're a they've been isolated. That gene has been isolated in those, so they will breed true. Fred says, thanks, Chris. Enjoyed as always. Have a great weekend, all. Thank you. You too. All right, a couple of people saying good quality video. I can notice it on my end looking a little pixelated too. Oh, after I shut the lights off, it seems kind of funky. I don't know. All right, Magicians for Christ says, I have a 37 by 19 cage. How many quail would you put in it? Let's see, 37 by 19. How many square feet is that? That's going to be, what is that, roughly 3 feet by 2 feet. It's close to 6, it's like 5.5 square feet, something like that, if my math is right. Then you want to look at, like I said, about 1 bird per square foot, and you can go just a little bit over that, especially if they're raised. If you're using like a wire bottom where the droppings will fall through and won't pile up in the cage, you can get away with a little bit higher than that. So in that, I would probably go with about 7 to 8 birds, somewhere right around in there. That's probably a good amount. All right, first name, last name, says new subscriber and new quail raiser. Thanks for all the wisdom. Well, thank you for subscribing. Thanks for joining the live feed. All right, I got to wrap this up, guys. Sorry, we're out of time. We've been going just a little bit over an hour. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your comment this time. Thank you guys so much for joining every week. We do this again pretty much every Thursday, 7 o'clock Central, unless life gets in the way for some reason. So God bless each and every one of you. We will see you again next week.